There are three S's that seem to define almost all anti-religious rhetoric, especially the anti-Mormonism that we often face. One S is sensational, a second is superficial, and a third is selective. And when you're dealing with plural marriage, all three of those come to the fore. Plural marriage is so easy to sensationalize, or another S, to sexualize, and think that that's all that was about. It's so easy to get our minds running in that direction. And all of a sudden we sense, ex-Mormon, anti-Mormons love making Joseph Smith appear like a pedophile. And they'll throw words out like that, just for shock and awe sake, to over-sensationalize everything. What does that do? It forces the question from the head to the heart. And we go emotional instead of rational. We can't slowly, calmly ask people what the experience was like, and let's study these things carefully. It's like, no, I'm up in arms and I'm freaking out about this. Then on top of that, they go with a more superficial approach and a selective one where they don't deepen things beyond the surface level to understand marriage age on the Western frontier in 19th century America, or the different fluctuating marriage norms that were taking place in the mid-19th century. They want to give you an infographic. I've seen these ones. A simple infographic that freaks people out over the number of Joseph Smith's wives, for example, without the accompanying infographic that shows the children of Joseph Smith, none of whom were born to any wife except Emma. Wait, really? Joseph has all these wives, but he only has children through Emma? Am I rushing to conclusions on what plural marriage entailed? When it mentions polyandry and underage wives and everyone's freaking out over these things, be careful about the sensational, the superficial, and the selective when we're only hearing the worst possible side of things. Calm, exercise faith, think through, look for historical context, try to understand the fullness of these things as much as is available and possible to us, and read everything you can on both sides of the issue. As one of the earliest saints who practiced plural marriage said, and she's one who is often sensationalized and superficialized and selectivized, if we can turn those all into verbs. She said, plural marriage is a subject that can bear investigation. And she lived it. If you're confused by this, ask us, study us, and we'll try to help you navigate it. It was hard for us to start as well, believe me. Well, where do we see all of this? Look at section 132, verse 1, 2, and 3. And this sets the stage for it. This is what prompted the revelation to begin with. Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, my servant Joseph, that inasmuch as you have inquired of my hand to know and understand wherein I, the Lord, justified my servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as also Moses, David, and Solomon, my servants, as touching the principle and doctrine of their having many wives and concubines. We're talking plural marriage here. Joseph has the question. He's inquired of God's hand to know about these things, to understand these things. But notice the word choice. He's like, God, how were Abraham, Isaac, Jacob? How were Moses, David, Solomon? How are they justified? Justified suggests that Joseph understood their actions as unjust. It's like, that seems really wrong to me and to the rest of 19th century America. Why would you call people that were polygamists to be your prophets? How does that even work? How is that justifiable? Later on, we won't cover these verses this year, but 4 years ago, I went at length about Joseph's concern over adultery. That word comes up so many times in section 132. Because that word scared Joseph to death. It scared Brigham to death and John Taylor to death. Brigham Young was the one who said, I went to a funeral shortly after hearing about plural marriage. And for the first time in my life, I envied the guy in the coffin. I did not want to have to live to do this. John Taylor was like, I was a man of such chastity and virtue. I looked down at people that were unchaste as scoundrels. They weren't gentlemen. I think too often we take 21st century immorality and superimpose it upon 19th century Victorian sentimentality and assume that they're as guilty as people today would be. And that is presentism, that is anachronism, that is an unfair judgment. Could plural marriage have been abused in some instances? Unfortunately, yes. But talk to those who practiced it. And they all felt like we do. It's wrong. What do I do with this? How do I navigate this? Is this something I'm supposed to do? As I hinted before, these are things that people are still wrestling with this today. And on one extreme, you have fundamentalists that say we should still be practicing plural marriage and it was always right and it's still right and we're supposed to do this. The church is off the rails by not allowing plural marriage to continue. That's one extreme. The other extreme is the polygamy deniers that say it never happened. At least Joseph Smith never practiced it. And he told the truth when he said it wasn't the case. And it's like, oh, we've got to know our history better than that. To avoid both extremes of the fundamentalists and the deniers. Somewhere in the middle are those who, well, there's certain levels of denial. One is to protect Joseph in their minds. There's no way he could have possibly practiced this. The other is to protect God in their minds. There's no way God could have commanded this. So either way, it's wrong. I know that. There's no way that a prophet that I love would practice it or a God that I love would command it. But I wonder what we're doing with the history we read, what we're doing with our understanding of Joseph Smith, if that's your concern, or of God, if that's your concern. In some ways, can we ask the people who practiced it how they felt about Joseph Smith and how they felt about God? What it boils down to is, did this really come from God or not? And that's one we're going to have to wrestle with. The rule has always been monogamy. The Book of Mormon makes that crystal clear in Jacob chapter 2. Joseph Smith made that crystal clear. And even threatened his brother Hiram that he loved with damnation if he practiced any kind of plural marriage outside the careful confines that God had set. This is playing with fire. And we're not playing, but the fire is real. We have to be so careful about this practice, or it will lend itself to abuse. And God delights in chastity. He demands it. And you see that clearly in section 132. How is this even justified? Well, the Lord responds in the next verse, "Behold and lo, I am the Lord thy God, and will answer thee as touching this matter. Therefore, prepare thy heart to receive and obey the instructions which I am about to give unto you. For all those who have this law revealed unto them must obey the same." Right then, if I were Joseph, I would gulp hard and go, "Oh, no, never mind. I'm good. I'm not. All of a sudden, I'm not very curious about that topic anymore." Because the way you just said that sounds like something big is coming down the pipeline. If you tell us this, you're going to hold us accountable to this knowledge. If you are restoring this practice, and now that I know that it was justified because God commanded it, then if you command me, then I'm required to keep that commandment too. What am I supposed to do with this? I think we sometimes we prefer our plausible deniability. And I think often what we do to try to make sense of this in easier ways is to hope to avoid having to wrestle with this in the hard ways that the early saints had to. This is hard. This one's difficult. I would simply repeat the phrases the Lord used. Prepare thy heart. And this topic is one that's going to require a prepared heart. If you look at verse 4 and 5, "Behold, I reveal unto you a new and an everlasting covenant." This is a subset of the marriage covenant that is eternal. Again, the rule is monogamy. The exception to the rule is polygamy. Keep those straight. But it's all under the broad umbrella of the new and everlasting covenant of marriage. He says, if you do not abide that covenant, then are ye damned, no progression. For no one can reject this covenant and be permitted to enter into my glory, at least not the highest level where eternal progression persists. For all who have a blessing at my hands shall abide the law which was appointed for that blessing, and the conditions thereof, as were instituted from before the foundation of the world. Now that phrase made me think of a phrase that we skipped over in section 130 that's really key in all of this. Back in 130, verse 20 and 21, the Lord said, there is a law irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundations of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. And when we obtain any blessing from God, it is by obedience to that law upon which it is predicated. Now, he's not specifically talking about plural marriage in that passage, but he's talking about law and the connection between obedience and blessedness. And that when we obtain a blessing, it's because we kept the law that blessing was based on. Now, sometimes we can make that super specific and think every law has its own blessing attached. So what's the blessing attached to the law of tithing? Well, the Lord will open the windows of heaven and provide a blessing provide for what we need. Is that the blessing attached to tithing? Is there a blessing attached to the word of wisdom, that I can run and not be weary and walk and not faint? There are beautiful, specific instances of laws and blessings that are attached. But I also wonder when he says there is a law, maybe he meant the singular there. I mean, in addition to all those pairs, what if there is a law of obedience? And when we follow the commandments of God, God blesses us according to his time and his way and his will, whatever is best for us in that moment. And those blessings are predicated upon my obedience to the lawgiver, not just a specific law to get a specific blessing like it was some kind of cosmic vending machine, but rather obedience to God, trusting the lawgiver will give me whatever blessing he has in mind for me. It's okay to think specific with that, but also think general with that. And in some ways, especially if we go back to plural marriage, do I trust God? And is he the lawgiver? And can I rest assured that certain blessings will come to me because I am following the God of all goodness, the Lord of law, and the Lord of love? Keep that in mind as we move forward and wrestle with plural marriage. Because if you picture Joseph Smith given a command with not a lot of detailed instruction on exactly how to implement it, imagine this command: Joseph, unite the human race. Good luck with that. I want Zion to be one heart and one mind, dwelling in righteousness with no poor. I want the Abrahamic covenant to extend to bless all the families of the earth. I want a oneness among my children as they approach a oneness with their heavenly parents. So unite the human race. Part of that will be through plural marriage for a time. It's the exception, but I'm commanding you to live by this exception. And not every Latter-day Saint would. Not all were commanded to do so. But those who were, that had that responsibility and accountability, how are we going to do that? And Joseph felt, at least from his perspective and from the other people that you ask, talk to the saints who practiced it. And as they discuss these things and describe these things, there is a sense of, I know this is what God is commanding me to do. But how do we do it? I don't know. We're trying to connect the entire human race. So in many of the early marriages to Joseph Smith, for example, especially the polyandrous ones, where it was a woman that he married that was already married to someone else. Sometimes they were married to a non-member or someone that was not active, and there was even one occasion where the man was like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm still going to be with my wife for time, but I don't even believe in eternity. So if you want to be sealed to Joseph Smith for eternity, be my guest. I like the guy. Like, that's fascinating historically. There's zero evidence of sexual intercourse in those kinds of relationships. It was an eternity-only sealing. But in some ways, it's like, how are we going to connect the human race? There's a law. There's blessings attached to that law. I don't know exactly the specifics of how we're supposed to live this. And so there's idea of plural marriage and polyandrous marriages. There's dynastic sealings. There's adoptions into the family of Joseph or Brigham or Heber. It was almost like they were trying a tribes of Israel approach. That was a scriptural precedent. How was the house of Israel so large? Well, plural marriage. And if there's supposed to be like a tribe of Ephraim and a tribe of Manasseh and a tribe of Judah and a tribe of Levi, is that how we're supposed to do it? I don't know for sure. Are we doing it like a tribe of Joseph and a tribe of Brigham and a tribe of Parley and a tribe of Heber? Because so many of those marriages that Joseph Smith entered into were with children or sisters or like daughters or sisters or, older sisters included of his circle of leaders. So Joseph could be connected to Brigham through his sister Fanny, could be connected to Lorenzo Snow through his sister Eliza, could be connected to Willard Richards. All these we're just joining Joseph Smith's tribe, so to speak. And it wasn't until the Wilford Woodruff administration where they thought, a simpler way to connect the entire human race, rather than some kind of tribal connections that require all these strange adoptions and so on, what if we just all connected people through the family tree? And if we go all the way back, it's not a bunch of horizontal connections like we've been trying to do for the last 40 years. It's vertical connections, parents to children to ancestors, until we all join back with our primeval parents, Adam and Eve. As long as we connect to them, we're all connected to each other. And that's the way we've been doing it ever since. Thank heaven. I am so grateful we're able to return to the rule and past the exception, but still keep the commandment whereon such incredible blessings are predicated. I hope that makes sense. It requires probably a lot more explanation than I'm giving it. But I will say this also. When it comes to plural marriage, it was so exceptional, so countercultural, it would require an incredible amount of self-sacrifice on the part of anyone who participated. And can I just suggest something here? I don't think monogamy was meant to be any less self-sacrificial. I don't think celestial monogamy was meant to be any less countercultural than celestial polygamy. I think in some ways, I wonder if God was telling us something about marriage in general. It will require all that you have to give it. It will require you turning to God and following His directions on how to hold on to your family forever. It will require no less obedience, no less discipline, no less self-sacrifice. We're not getting the easy version or the easy way out now that polygamy is behind us. No, my marriage still has to take priority over any other earthly thing if I hope to make that marriage worthy of eternity.